photos. So welcome to Hollis Does Brunch, everybody. I'm Hollis, and I'm so excited to be partnering with the Smithsonian APA for the special program that's celebrating the start of APA Heritage Month, as well as celebrating Care Package. And that sound bath video was by an artist named Lowleaf, as well as Alex Abelos and Adam Loban did the visuals as well. And yeah, Lowleaf was supposed to join us as a guest, but she's not feeling well today. So we're sending her all of our love and positive vibes, but wanted to start it off with that exquisite piece. And we're going to be seeing excerpts of more pieces as we move through the day. I'm really excited to gather three dear friends and wonderful, wonderful artists to talk about this digital offering that Smithsonian APA has brought together called Care Package. It's a multimedia gathering of art meant to provide cultural nourishment for times like this. So can't wait to get into it. But right before we do, I'm going to perform a song, and kind of inspired by, I was talking to JessXSnow yesterday, and she was like, why don't you do a cover? And I thought about who my Asian American pop culture heroes were and when I was growing up. And I wanted to play a song by a songwriter that really inspired me back in the day, who is mixed Asian just like me. Her name is Michelle Branch, and this song is called Everywhere. Turn it inside out so I can see the part of you that's drifting over me. And when I wake you're never there. When I sleep you're everywhere. You're everywhere. Just tell me how I got this far. Just tell me why you're here and who you are. 'Cause every time I look, you're never there. And when I sleep, you're everywhere, yeah. 'Cause you're everywhere to me. When I close my eyes, it's you that I see. Everything I know that makes me believe I'm not alone. Oh no, no, I'm not alone. Recognize the way you make me feel. I start to think that you might not be real, but then to know the water's getting deep. I try to rush the pain away from me, away from me. All right, 'cause you're everywhere to me. When I close my eyes, it's you I see. Everything I know that makes me believe I'm not alone. Oh, oh, I'm not alone. Oh man, we had a video interference. Sorry about that. But that's the end of my song, Everywhere but Michelle Branch. My bad. The audio is always effing up. But without further ado, I'm going to bring in my guests that I'm so excited to see. Please feel free to unmute yourselves. Adriel, Jess, and Sham. How's everybody feeling?
Hey, Hollis.
Hey.
Hey, what's up? What's up?
Chillin'. Sorry, I'm just now getting to the chat here, seeing Dan. Hey, Paul. Hey, Whitney. Hey, Elusive. Sending you guys so much love. Awesome. Well, I'm really hyped to have each of these artists here. They are artists that I am dear friends with and also who create incredibly resonant and grounded work. So I'd love if we could just take a turn introducing ourselves to the audience. Adriel, why don't we start with you?
All right, what's up, everybody? I'm speaking in like quiet storm voice because apparently my microphone's hella high, so that's why I'm speaking like this. But I'm really excited to be here to join y'all. Such beautiful people, yeah, and folks that I know from so many different paths in my life coming together in this moment around the care package. Love y'all so. Excited.
Awesome. And Adriel, maybe could you, because this is a partnership with Smithsonian APA, could you maybe share a little bit more about what Smithsonian APA is and the work that you do there and maybe what led you to the work there?
Okay, yeah. So I know Hollis from being a poet in the Youth Speaks Bay Area spoken word scene, and you know, being a poet and performing and being around so many different parts of the Asian American community when I was touring colleges really just gave me a really unique and vivid sense of, like how our people live all throughout the country. And so about 7 years ago, I was thinking about I wanted to do more collaborations with a wider scope of artists, and this opportunity to be a curator came up. And the Smithsonian Asian Pacific American Center is not a traditional museum, so a lot of it is about creating new formats, figuring out new ways to do things with very limited resources, which is basically a story of my artistic life. And so, it's been good just kind of bringing those vibes over to the Smithsonian. And I'm really proud because for this May, for APA Heritage Month, we've decided to dedicate this entire month to fighting xenophobia. So not just the kind of xenophobia that's happening right now against Asian folks around COVID, but also just thinking about how this is so reflective of how Muslims were treated and continue to be treated post 9/11. How different folks are treated in different with different global conflicts with Black folks in the police, but also anti-Blackness within Asian American communities, for example. So how do we really take this month and focus on really ending that hate? And so, yeah, we're doing a lot of stuff I'm excited about for that. You can find a lot of more information at smithsonianapa.org.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think, even though in an ideal world, we would have a physical space to call the Smithsonian APA project or to gather, I think it's like really powerful, the work that you've been doing over the years as a digital curator there, internationally, really forging connections between artists. And yeah, you just created some really awesome work, including obviously Care Package, which we're here today celebrating. So moving on, Sham, why don't we move to you, streaming from the East Coast. Let us know just a little bit, an introduction of who you are and how today finds you.
Hi, Hollis and Jess and Adriel. It's so great and such a gift to be in your company this morning. And so glad for everyone that's able to tune in today to all be together. I am doing okay over here. It's Ramadan, so we are like within the first week of the month, and so it's like quite a Ramadan, just so much reflection and just coming really face to face with truths, the truths of the world and the truths within yourself. And so I definitely cherish moments like this where we can all come together and be together, especially now. And I think I'm supposed to share a little bit of what we've been eating right now to break our fasts. And so I have been making some old like Hyderabadi dishes that have like strong immunity based elements. Recently I made some katta to be eaten with khichdi and keema, and katta is like this really tangy tamarind base kind of I don't know what you would call it. It's like kind of like a chutney that you would like put over the rice and and it's like tamarinds and onions and chilies and lots of garlic, and it has this like sesame base as well, and it's just so flavorful and boosts up your immunity from the onions and the garlic. So that's one of the things. We also made a kabuli, which is a kind of lentil-based biryani. And so both stuff was super yummy. And just a little bit about me. I'm a Philadelphia-based poet. I got to meet you and Adriel through the Poetry Summit, the APIA Poetry Summit. And I cherish that a lot. But yeah, it's a blessing to have known you for so long and get to be here now in this moment.
Thank you so much, Sham. First of all, that sounds delicious, what you're eating. I was like, so fragrant, all the spices. It's like I can smell it now. And I love how it's, anti-inflammatory, fighting and keeping our immune system strong. But yeah, so thank you so much for sharing. And yeah, Sham and I have known each other through the APIA Poetry Summit community. And I think we got a couple folks in the chat, Dan Diggity, I want to shout out, Tayo Na, I want to shout out, that are tuning in. Community that we developed, and it was hugely formative for me as a young poet, just realizing that you could be an Asian American spoken word poet, and that was like a viable thing to do, and it wasn't just this wacky thing that I was envisioning in my head. But that community has stayed really dear throughout the years, and so this is definitely a reflection of that. So thanks for calling that out, and thanks so much for joining us today. Jess, why don't we turn it to you? Streaming live from Bushwick. Let us know how you're feeling, and just a little bit about who you are.
Hi, so I'm doing well. This is my first social event since quarantine began, so very interesting to be social again. I've just been finishing up my my a film that I was working on called Little Sky about a non-binary Asian American drag queen who confronts their estranged father about domestic violence. And I've just been working on writing new screenplays, and I've been thinking a lot about how me and my family and relatives have been divided by like the Pacific Ocean and borders for a really long time. So so it's been interesting to be able to have more free time and be able to connect more with my friends and family overseas, because usually I'm too busy to be able to talk to them. So the quarantine has almost forced me to be able to check in with them more, and it makes me think about how art and conversation can be sent across borders, and how that can be done in a digital age. So I've just been thinking a lot about that. Yeah, and I'm very happy to be a part of this. Hollis, I'm a big fan of Hollis, and Adriel is a really dear friend of mine, and Sham I've looked up to for a very long time. So, yeah.
Awesome. And Jess, thank you so much for sharing that. And I think that that sentiment in terms of like, as we are isolated, what does our connectivity look like, and how can it have gravity and feel meaningful in this age? I think that's really astute. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of how this brunch was born, in a desire to be able to gather community and make connections that are meaningful in this time when we can't physically be together. And although obviously it's really hard not to be able to see each other, you know, I'm thankful for spaces such as this, and then thinking about how we can, again, communicate in a meaningful way. So with that said, I'd love to kind of break open Care Package, which is a digital suite of multimedia art that was curated by Adriel, by the Smithsonian. And we're going to be sharing excerpts from both Sham and Jess's work. Jess, in addition to being a poet, and a filmmaker, is an artist as well. And the poetry video that Sham worked on is really exquisite as well. So I can't wait to share those things with you. But before we get into the art, Adriel, I'm curious if you could share a little about how the concept of Care Package was conceived, and just what the process was like gathering artists remotely to create something that was meant to live on the web, and how to do that in a thoughtful way.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, just drop it in the comments if it's too loud on the audio, because I feel like I don't want to. I want to talk like me on a Sunday morning. Anyway, yeah. So I was in the Philippines when COVID really started going down back in January, and so at the time I think it was something that people thought was going to be just contained in China or in Asia, and then by the time we got back to the U.S., things were still really starting to flare up. And so I've been thinking about it for quite a while, and just kind of watching in real time, like sort of the scare happen in Manila, and then seeing it a few weeks later, the scare happening again, out here in the U.S. And like I think with a lot of people, similar with a lot of people, I was just like feeling a lot of anxiety and wanting to be, not wanting to tune out of it, but at the same time, just like getting really jarred by the headlines. And as informative as each headline might be, in terms of specific information about certain topics, it wasn't really giving me a clear view of really how people have been experiencing and responding to this moment. And I think in particular, when it comes to Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, or just Asian folks and Pacific folks in general, a lot of the information coming out was putting folks as victims. So either victims of this terrible disease, or victims of hate crimes and xenophobia that's been happening. And again, like that's really important information, but at the same time, it wasn't really reflecting the way that I was seeing a lot of people responding to it, which was, like especially artists, hopping on even while they're stressing out about their incomes and how they're going to get their gigs, we're still being very generative and giving and creative. And so I wanted to really put together something that honors that. And thankfully, over the course of the last few years at the APA Center, we've really shifted towards working with artists to build work. And a lot of what's come out has been things focusing on meditation, on mindfulness, but in our own terms, kind of as a contrast to the ways that a lot of folks are kind of marketed mindfulness these days. And so the care package is really that, kind of like one of the first stages in this longer journey I've been on, and just incorporating more of that practice into my own life and also into the work that I'm doing as a curator.
I love that. And I think that, thank you so much for sharing that story. And I think that the idea of care package being in some ways a response to the commodification and capitalization of the concept of taking care of self. I know we've had conversations about this between us, and I think that just largely we can see the ways in which kind of the wellness industry or the self-care industry, the self-care industrial complex, like strips really the essence and the heart of practice. And that's kind of far too often the way that we interact with both our heritage and our, contemporary spirituality, which now more than ever, I think is important to explore. So that's what I really love about Care Package and why I'm so thankful that for your conception and for bringing these artists together. And yeah, so I put the link in the chat, Smithsonian APA /care. And so you can check out all the pieces there. But we're actually going to move to peep the first excerpt that we have, which is JessXSnow's piece that I'm going to bring up. It's called After Earth. It's a short film by her, Kit Yan, and Peter Pa. Maybe Jess, could you give us a little introduction to the film itself before I play the excerpt?
Okay, so After Earth is an immersive 3-channel installation about that Adriel was a producer on, and it was a collaboration between me and Kit Yan and Peter Pa, who are also really wonderful Asian American artists, and it brings together 4 different Asian and Pacific perspectives about how to care for the earth, and each one is like an offering to the earth, and it's a little bit of an experimental documentary. But on the care package, it's like the single screen format. But and we made it in Hawaii and Los Angeles, and yeah, I hope you enjoy it.
Yay! Okay, I'm going to share an excerpt now.
Grow up. Does the land continue to give birth to generation after generation and it continues to provide for us, it continues to nurture and shelter us. One day, when the mother becomes frail and like a child, that it will be our children to take care of us, and thus the cycle of life.
If there's anything that I hope for the future is that I hope we do not forget what love is.
Ku ha'aheo, e ku Hawaii.
Hey, Jess. Awesome. Thank you so much for, yeah, I mean, the film itself is so exquisite, and I'm curious if you could just chat a little bit more about how you conceived of After Earth, and kind of what it meant to you through that creative process to be working both in Los Angeles and in Hawaii on Indigenous land, and what you hope people can take the insight and the wisdom from it.
So the film was part of and initially part of an exhibition called Aikai that Adriel and a couple of curators at the Smithsonian Asian Pacific a center curated together, and we were all invited to work together, and it was like a lot of Asian American and like Asian and Pacific Islander artists, and also Native Hawaiian artists from all over the world. We were brought together to create this exhibit, and me and Kit Yan, who was the main collaborator, we wanted to create something that we felt like could bring together the community and like create kind of like this kind of like an offering of like transnational solidarity between different Asian and Pacific Islanders. So we have Hinale Moana, who is a native Hawaiian hula dancer, and she's transgender, and the offering that she gave was the song that she composed for the protectors of Mauna Kea, and we basically gave every person each of the subjects kind of like like we asked them what they would put inside a time capsule for the Earth if they were to preserve it in a film. So each person like chose a different thing, and we had Caleb Briet, who is a mixed Indonesian, Dutch, and Native American artist, and she composed the song. And like Kit Yan, mom showed us her gardening, and Isa Borgedson, who's a Filipino poet from Oakland, she performed a poem about her mom and stuff. So everybody kind of came together, and I wanted to create kind of like a space that we could all like share knowledge about how we take care of the land and also heal together. And After Earth kind of became a culmination of all of those things and tied together by all the threads that unite us and stuff. And yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's incredible to be able to kind of open up that offering, and anywhere from a song to gardening can be the artistic contribution to a time capsule for what happens after Earth. I'm curious, Jess, you've actually been working on a new script since we've all been on lockdown. So I'm curious if you could tell us a little more about the art that has been provoked within you while you've been sheltering in place.
Yeah, so something that I've been thinking about a lot is my relationship to China. A lot of my parents are from they're from southern China in Jiangxi province, and for like a really long time I felt like I had a lot of shame for being Asian American and for being Chinese, and every time I returned to China I felt like it was only because my parents forced me to in order to see my family. But then like over quarantine I there were some friends in China that I worked on a shoot on, and over quarantine I've been able to reconnect with my homeland in a way where I felt like it was through my own agency, and a dream that I've always had was to be able to make to make films in China. So I've been working with my really long-term friend who's a Chinese co-writer on a new script that takes place in China 100 years from now, and it's like a science fiction magical realist film called Breathlessness, and it is about a future where all the oxygen in the atmosphere has been reduced. And it follows a boy who's in love with like a plant who lives in a greenhouse, and he feels like this, by like propagating this plant, he can like restore the earth to its natural he can restore the atmosphere to its natural state with the plant creating more oxygen and stuff. And he has to like prove to like a lot of scientists in the city, and they basically don't support his visions. So he basically uses the water in his body to become one with the earth, and to like kind of reincarnate the earth for future generations. And it's just like an idea that me and my friend were talking about for a long time, and we're trying to make it a film and shoot next summer. So it's a project that I'm really excited about. Yeah.
No, it's amazing. I just love this idea of thinking about how to, I think a lot of us are just thinking in this time, in addition to how do we care for ourselves now, we're thinking about what does the future look like? And the idea of taking science fiction as an opening to understanding what the world could be is really exciting. And furthermore, I think using this screenwriting process for you to kind of negotiate and reflect upon and come to terms with what the relationship is between you and Homeland, I think is really powerful. So I'm excited to see this film, this 100 years in the future China, where there's no plants except for a young boy in a greenhouse. I can see it now. So I'm excited just in general. Jess is actually a student. She's getting her MFA at NYU for their very prestigious film school there, and has been really working her ass off on projects. And so thank you so much for bringing these visions to life. After Earth is beautiful. Please, everybody, from that excerpt, check out the full length film. And can't wait for your new project that you're working on. Great. Well, so before we go to Sham, I was curious if we could take a brunch break. Adriel, I'm curious what you're eating for brunch today.
Yeah. So yeah, sorry, I've been like fidgeting around. Like we just moved to LA a couple of months ago, so I'm just like nerding out at this kitchen, cooking every night. But I started last week. I made this really bomb pizza. I was craving pizza, and I decided to just make it. And so I'm doing this. I'm using the same recipe for the pizza, except this time I'm making a flatbread. Here, never mind. I thought I could switch it around. Well, I'll just show you like this. So this is the dough, but I put some fresh turmeric in it. So also on the same anti-inflammatory tip, making that turmeric dough. And then I've also made like, or I'm working on kind of like a daka kind of thing. So I've got some hazelnuts and almonds I've roasted, some coriander and dill seed. I normally would put cumin, but we've been eating cumin like crazy out here, so we're out. And I'm just grind that up, and then they'll basically be like a bread and a dip thing. Oh, and then also, just because I see you in the chat, check out this 5-pounder bag of When Coffee Supply, keeping me nice and caffeinated. Yeah, it's my brunch.
That 5-pound for sure. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I am actually nomming on something that I did not make, but that I wanted to shout out my friend Tessa Diadem. She is the pastry chef at All Day Baby and Here's Looking at You, and they've been doing takeout windows every so often. So I knew, I have to say, I did take a bite into this because I was so hungry, but she's making these impossibly big bagels. And then here, I'll spotlight it so you guys can really see the enormity of this bagel. Check this out. And then this cream cheese, which is something that I think we could all adapt, is actually kind of like a sushi cream cheese. So she put fish roe in with the cream cheese, as well as some nori dusting and sesame seeds. So it all just comes together to make one delicious sushi-ish bagel breakfast. And I am really loving it all. So shout out Tessa Diadem, brilliant pastry chef. Awesome. Okay, well, Sham, why don't we go to you? And I'm curious, we're gonna tee up an excerpt of your piece for a care package between you. And could you introduce it a little bit and let us know the origin story behind the piece and how it came to be?
Sorry. Okay. I hope you can hear me. Well, first, I'm just like, that flatbread, Sarah's coffee, your bagels. I'm still like in a haze from that. But Between You and You is a poem that is in my most recent book of poetry called City of Pearls. I had written it during a period of time where I just had some very close time with myself while I was in Nepal doing a trek in the Himalayas. And so I was really happy to share that particular poem in this care package because it's a piece that kind of explores the power of having just coming face to face with yourself and your own truths, your own light, your own shadows, your own beauty, and just embracing it all and finding liberation in that, and finding peace in that. So I was hoping it be an offering in this moment right now of so much uncertainty for so many people, that one thing that is certain is our relationship with ourself and our relationship to our own truths within ourself, and the well of peace and light that kind of dwells inside each of us, and the strength we can pull from those reserves. When Adriel reached out to me about the care package, I also put together a video to sort of accompany the poem. The poem also I recorded on a EP that I released in the fall of 2019. I worked with the amazing Kais Assar, who did the music for the piece and is on the rabab on the particular poem. And I got to meet him actually through the Smithsonian. We were both invited in 2018 to perform at the Kennedy Center as a part of a program called Now You See Us. Nafisa put that together through Smithsonian APA, and I got to meet Kais for the first time, and we got to perform together for the first time. And so on my own after that, I had invited him to join me on this project I was doing, where I'd taken poems from my book City of Pearls and put them into an album form to be accompanied by music. So you can listen to that whole album on any of the streaming sites like Spotify, or go to Bandcamp. And for this particular care package, though, I put together this video of like my own clips. So they're kind of low res, but there's heart there, of different places I've had the gift to get to be, to experience, and the ways that nature is such a reflection of our own spirits. And I also just want to send a shout to Jess, and how beautiful that piece is. And every time I see that that piece. Like I always cry. It's just so, it captures just so many layers and levels of so many things. So it's just a real honor to get to share my piece along with that. But yes, it's just an offering just to remind us we are a reflection of nature and we're very much a part of her. And you know, that there is fertile ground to really come face to face with your own truths.
Absolutely. Okay, great. Without much further ado, let's share the clip Between You and You.
Between you and you. Somewhere on a cliff in the Himalayas, you smelled the fragrance of your own mortality. You found your reflection in the mud. You honored the way you loved, the way your heart broke, how life became living, became generative, regenerative magic. Mimic nature experienced itself. When the boulders lodged in your spine finally turned to dust, when you learned how to stand straight, when you laid flowers at the entrance to your womb, when a thread of light lit a river through you, a conduit between Earth's core and infinity, here you kissed the middle of your own palm, above the lifeline, below the heartline. You experienced how spirit rests in the colors at the edge of breath, meridians, small portals to no space or time. You stopped longing, wishing, caring, became bone, blood, breath, a heart of 4 chambers, and release.
Yes.
Between you.
Awesome. Sham, I love, love, love that piece. And I think I wasn't even really that aware that it was your own footage and all the places that you had been, which adds such a special layer to it all. I just loved all the insights that you said in the introduction, let alone the poem itself, but just the idea that amidst uncertainty, the most certain thing that you can establish is your relationship with self. And oftentimes the most mysterious and elusive, but certainly worth working on. And yeah, the piece itself is just so phenomenal. I just love that opening line about the fragrance of your own mortality. That speaks to my sad girl soul. So, so I was curious, Sham, I know that you and I have talked about what's on your heart as this pandemic rages, especially as, you know, we talked with Jess about the way in which she's using art to navigate and to negotiate her relationship with homeland. And so I'm curious what's on your heart when it comes to your homeland in India, and kind of the work that you'd love us to be aware of moving forward.
Thanks so much, Hollis. Well, prior to just this pandemic, India was already kind of going through its own massive crises that has not dissipated. You know, there's a genocide underway, and you know, many of a genocide that's just been exacerbated by the pandemic. So, you know, we were dealing with pogroms that were taking place in Delhi just a few weeks before, you know, some of the lockdowns had taken place through the world. And, you know, so many people had lost their lives, Indian Muslims and oppressed caste communities. And they lost their homes, they lost their lives, there were schools burnt, there were hospitals burnt. This is all during Trump's presidential visit to India, while all of this murder and violence and lynchings and you know pogroms were taking place in Delhi. You had people that then were completely displaced and living in camps. And so then when India locked down, they are trapped in these camps without homes. And the other really insidious thing that's taking place as a part of this pandemic is that in India, there's a lot of Islamophobia connected to the virus, and there are all kind of Islamophobic commentaries and anti-Muslim sentiment that is taking place. So there's a genocide taking place, parallel to the violence of the pandemic itself. I really encourage folks to follow the work of Equality Labs. And you can stay abreast in what ways that you can support and know what is happening in relation to our communities. And if you want to, send any kind of support in any way, you can do so through that amazing organization, so Equality Labs. And so in terms of some of my own work, I've just been writing pieces, just thinking about some of that and just what ways I can, whatever ways I can contribute to try to put an end to the extreme violence that's taking place there.
Thank you so much, Sham. I know that it's just heartbreaking across the board, just what the pandemic has not only, brought the anxieties and the concern and the confusion and real health issues, and also how it has been exacerbating existing issues. And I know that I have a lot of learning to do in terms of what's happening in India on the ground. And so I put it in the link, but Equality Labs, I think, is a really great place for those of us to start that want to learn more about what's happening in India, how communities are protecting themselves and fighting back against discrimination and hate. It's really heartbreaking to hear that the xenophobia that we've seen in the United States is also echoed in India as well, and exacerbating the issue of anti-Muslim discrimination and prejudice. So thank you so much for sharing that. I know it's hard to get down into the heart of that, but I really appreciate you bringing that to the table. So we're going to be ending our brunch with 2 live performances from Sham and Jess, which I can't wait to hear their performed poetry. But before then, we did have a question from one Dan Diggity that I was thinking, Adriel, that you could take for the team. So Dan's question is, especially in the United States, how will experiencing the arts, cultural institutions, and creative gatherings change in a post-COVID-19 world? Will it matter much, or will we always adapt to the times? So Adriel, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that right now, like from what I've been seeing, I mean, at the Smithsonian, all the museums are closed. There's not really a definite date when it's going to open, and a lot of people have been, not just museums, but a lot of folks have been trying to use the moment to, like resurface works. I mean, in some ways, the care package is doing that as well. But I think at the same time, the main thing I would be excited to see is like better infrastructure among organizations for paying artists, because I know right now that's been one of the struggles. It's like, it's not that there's no budget, because especially now, like everybody's events have gotten canceled. There's a lot of budget, but there's just so much paperwork involved in getting money from an organization to an artist. And so I think that's been one of the things that I've been seeing, is like the organizations that are actually able to like cut resources and funds out to artists quickly, I think are the ones that are going to really make it through and really be recognized for showing up. And so I'd be excited to see that, just like more ways for artists to get paid. And I think also just like there's a much bigger opportunity for folks who are not institutions, just like small collectives, smaller organizations, to really step up and show stuff off. Like I think I think what you're doing each week, Hollis, is really amazing. I mean, like the things that have really been keeping me grounded every week has not necessarily been stuff that museums have been putting on. It's been stuff that like my folks are putting on that I know that I can like hop on, see people I know, connect with people, and talk about things I care about.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's a really great point. I think right now with everything, it's about how quickly can we adapt and how quickly can we pivot. And obviously we don't want to rush for the sake of rushing, but I think to your point, like what does it look like to be truly impactful for the artist community? And in what ways has COVID demonstrated institutions and organizations that might have a nice mission, but at the end of the day, that connectivity and that ability to directly respond to the need is just not there. And I know people who are here in the chat right now have a robust critique of the arts nonprofit industrial complex and how ultimately it's, there's a lot of systems that are built to potentially, to promote our work, but maybe not to best serve us directly when we need help the most. And so we're creating new work in the face of it. Like I think about Jess, I'm about to invite you up to read poetry, but I go back to the script that you're writing currently. You're writing science fiction and creating a new generative work in response to this time now. And that's the kind of responsiveness we want to see. How can institutions come and uplift artists like Jess and ensure that Jess has what they need to create the work that they need to create in the world versus, trying to figure out how to take all their in-person programming online for the sake of that. So I would love to end this brunch with a little poetic live performance. And I'm so grateful that both Jess and Sham are going to read some poems to take us out. So Jess, if we could start with you, just let us know just a little baby intro of this, and can't wait to hear your poetry.
Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. I hope that this Hollis's brunch and everything that you hear brings some kind of healing to you. So I haven't been writing that much poetry lately. Here are just some excerpts that I wrote because I've been meditating about film and how like the blank page of like a poem or like the black leader of film can be like a portal to a new world, and how science fiction can be used to create like new futures and to cross borders. So I've just been meditating on those things as I've been finishing film. So I wrote some poems about filmmaking and about my learning about me and my mom's immigration story. One, if I no longer have family, then I discover family in my body. If my body is made of water, then my gender is the Pacific. If the Pacific is my gender, then every day I wash upon the shores of my homeland. And if my body is made of water, then everywhere I walk, I am home. 2, immigration was a choice that my parents made for me. When I was younger, I spoke Mandarin only when my mom forced it upon me in Saturday Chinese school. She would rip up the textbooks when I did not do my homework. When I asked my mother about her own childhood, she tells me of Cultural Revolution-torn China, when the farmers were sent to schools and the professors were sent to rice farms. She felt robbed of a chance to become an artist. I asked my mother how my parents got here. She told me that when the Red Guards came for her, she crawled into the stomach of her country, how it was so hungry that it swallowed her whole. And she told me hunger drives the body into imagination, that she imagined her way to America until the day it became real. So what then is immigration, if not imagination given a destination, a magic so powerful it must be banned, or a beast so elusive no nation can contain it? 3, I started making films because when I belong nowhere, I can excavate from the blank page a home. I bring my community into that home and we name it a movie. Between the sprocket holes of 16mm film, for once, my people in all of their queerness and color and immigrant journeys finally win. Is that not a country in itself? Is the cut between a faulty memory of the homeland I lost and a close-up of this body alive in America not a border being broken open? Is the discordance of directing actors in English and subtitled broken Chinese not its own orchestra? I reclaim the culture that I grew up without in the cinema I make. How many millenniums have we waited for the agency to frame the earth from our point of view? If we give a dandelion the spotlight, it will teach us how to bloom for no audience but the wind. If we frame the desert from the perspective of sparrows, the borders just look like wrinkles ready to be eroded by the breeze. If we give the wind the microphone, it has secrets to teach us. Perhaps wind is the first artist, cartographer of the sky. One hand changes all the weather. One brushstroke moves the entire ocean, yet every current leaves no mark. In cinema, there is no gravity. We make our own laws. We map the stars and cross the light years between them with a single snap of a slate. Let us turn the camera lens into a spaceship and take flight. If borders were the norm back there, then this expansiveness must be a new canon of science fiction. Let us stretch the edge of the frame into a new atmosphere. Let us breathe this clean air and know for certain we are going to live.
Wow. Drop some fire emojis in the chat if you thought that was incredible.
Blah, 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 blah.
Oh, Jess, thank you so much for sharing that piece. What I love about that piece is how personal and explicit and direct it is about your choices to be a filmmaker and use it as a transformative medium. Your imagery about wind being the first artist and the cartographer is just so exquisite. I hope that there's a place that we can revisit that piece because it was so beautiful. And thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, I see some fire emojis in the chat. Jess, you killed it. Thank you so much. Okay, so Sham, we're just gonna end with a piece with you and then we'll just say our final goodbyes and we'll take it out. But if you could just do a quick intro of this piece and read it, that'd be amazing.
Thanks, Hollis. And Jess, that was amazing. Thank you so much. This piece is called Invocation, and I just wanted to invoke our ancestors and their strong presence with us in this moment. Invocation. My dad walks with me in the mornings. The sun is new. Even in the cold, I can feel him in unknown spaces and collapse. If I were sad, he'd bring me fruit and water. If I were scared, he'd listen and offer counsel. He would give me a poem. He would tell me a joke, and I would know that he was there. I've never seen my dad cry, but I have seen him leave this world. I felt him as a machine sang a flat note parallel to a digital line on a screen. I reached for his hand. My dad walks with me in the mornings. He taught me how to plant things. He showed me how to herd sheep, to pay attention to life force and listen to the earth. He would tell me, this is but a moment. He would tell me, you're a good mom. He would show me maps in the sky and how evergreens never lose their emerald. He would read Ayatul Kursi. It would smell of safety and rose water. He would say, Aleph, Lam, Mim, and I would know that he was there. He would say, this world is full of secrets. He would say, listen.
So beautiful. Thank you so much. And thank you for bringing your father into this space. I'm so thankful for each of you to join today to make this brunch so special. I'm so thankful to you, Adriel, first and foremost, not only for being a personal inspiration for going on 15 years, but also for curating so thoughtfully in your role at the Smithsonian APA, for bringing together Care Package with artists such as Sham and Jess. Once again, check it out, Smithsonian APA/care. Its Care Package is really incredible. And thank you so much to Jess and Sham for sharing your work and sharing your heart. I people texting me telling me that they're in tears. Your presence and your honesty and your art is so meaningful and so. And I really am so thankful for y'all in the chat. I always forget to say this, but if you could subscribe to my channel, I'd really appreciate it. I'm really close to being able to get to the place where I can unlock some features. So please subscribe. Please share about Brunch on Instagram and Twitter and all the socials so that we can boost it. But I feel really just so warm and thankful and so inspired by each of the work that you all do in community, and really thankful that you spent time here today. Sending so much love to all of you guys in the chat. I love you, Sarah, love you, Dan, love you, Whitney, love y'all. Does anybody have any last words? Adriel?
Just appreciate you so much, Adriel, Hollis, Jess. Love you guys so much. Thank you so much for making this happen. And Adriel, thank you for really just having the vision to put together that care package as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sham. Thank you, Jess. Everybody, all the artists who were part of the care package were just so generous and giving and open when I reached out. And so I'm really excited about that. More information on this soon, but Hollis and I are collaborating on a larger project around healing practice at the Smithsonian. And so there's going to be a lot more stuff on this wavelength coming out. I'm really excited to just immerse myself in that. And since we still have you on, check out my little turmeric flatbread though.
I see you.
Yeah, my little ducker. To dip that. Yeah. But yeah, thank you everybody.
Yes, Jess, do you have any last words?
I'm just really happy that you were able to bring us the feeling of community, even though we've all been isolated. So thank you so much, Hollis, for organizing this. And I just remember the last time, like the day that we found out the lockdown was going to happen, I was with Adriel at your house in that room, and it was just really nice for the last social interaction before everything went down, to be with you. And now we are all reconnected again.
Yes, we certainly are. Well, I'm so appreciative to each of you for all that you put into the world on the daily as artists, and for joining us here today. Sending love to each of you tuning in, and those that are watching after the fact. Tune in for more brunches weekly. Just connect with all of our guests, connect with Sham and Jess. Hit up Sham directly to get your own copy of City of Pearls, her beautiful new poetry book. Send her a message and she can ship it to you directly. And follow Jess to see more of her work. And Adriel as well, who has some amazing writing on his Instagram. So sending everybody love. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week.